Many of us autistics have collections. Today I want to talk about why we have these collections and how we can use these factors in improving our daily lives. I'm Juliet and I'm a late diagnosed autistic, and here on my channel I aim to help autistics understand themselves and to guide those who wish to learn more about autism. It's a safe space where we want to be kind and learn and grow together. Non-autistic people collect items, but for autistic people it's often very different. Non-autistic people will tend to collect them just as a pastime, for pleasure, maybe for prestige even, and it's something that's enjoyable. For autistic people, it can be something that becomes cognitive, emotional, and connected to us in such a deep way that it's part of our lives and our autistic experience. We don't all collect items, but it's a trait that we tend to have. I'd like to look at 4 reasons we collect items. Now, these reasons are not necessarily distinct and they can be very interlinked, but I think it's very helpful to look at them and to try and understand ourselves better in light of these reasons. The first one is a fairly obvious one in that the collection might be linked to our special interest. And this is something that is part of the diagnostic criteria of autism. We don't all have special interests, but again, it is a common thread. Special interests become part of our identity and part of what it means to us to be autistic. And collecting items that are related to our special interest is immersing ourselves further in that interest. It's bringing that interest into our world, into our experience, into our identity. A second reason is for emotional regulation purposes. We might collect items based purely on their texture or their weight or their size or their color, and it's that distinct factor about them that makes us feel regulated when we look at them, when we immerse ourselves in those collections. Let me give you an example of myself. I collect paper. Now, what I mean by this is it can be paper that's scrapbooking paper that has different kind of patterns on it. It could be paper that's images from magazines. It could be paper that's from packets that has a particular texture or a nice image on it or a logo, or the packet itself is different colors. So there's a whole load of different types of paper that I collect, and it's for the texture of the paper and the sound that it makes when you work with paper and the feel of the paper. And I like to use these papers to make collages, and that also gives me a lot of textural input and visual input as I might page through a book of collages and I feel the papers and they're thick and they crinkle. It's purely a sensory experience. Then another reason is that we collect in order to create some predictability and some order in our world when we're living in such a chaotic space. So if we have this collection, we can maybe organize it or spend time setting it up in a certain way. It's ways in which we can bring structure and systems to our lives. Now, here's another example. As a child, I collected ornaments. Now, they weren't ornaments from a particular genre or anything like that. I had these ornaments, and basically I would spend time moving them around, setting them up in different positions, maybe having a different story around the positions, that kind of thing. And it's interesting because often this is how girls express that kind of trait that you see in boys when they are lining up cars or items like that. We tend to set a stage, if you like. Another reason is that they might serve as an emotional or a memory anchor. Now, this reason can be very similar to non-autistic people, where they might collect souvenirs from every place they visit or awards throughout their lifetimes. These are specific objects that we collect so that we can create a timeline of our past and our passage through our life. Or maybe they can be items that have a specific emotional connection to an event. We have a tendency to prefer emotional links to objects as opposed to people, and sometimes that is why we will use objects as a memory anchor. Also, sometimes we have poor memories, and having objects helps us to create those memories. When I was a child, we had a few holidays at the same place in an area of South Africa called the Drakensberg. And it's a very mountainous area, and there are lots of fresh streams coming down out of the mountains. And I would go and search for pebbles in these streams. And there were some really beautiful pebbles and stones, some of them almost see-through. They were beautiful. And I was very selective about which ones I chose. And I ended up with a tiny little bag of pebbles over these few holidays. It was such a connection to my identity as a person who connects with nature that I've carried those pebbles around for decades. And each time I've looked at them, I just haven't been able to part with them, because autistic people can become very stressed if we have to part with items that are part of our collections or that are very important to us. I'm not going to go into it here, but autistic people do tend to show higher levels of hoarding behavior than non-autistic people. How can we use our collections and our collecting abilities to improve our lives as autistic people? Firstly, let's think about the emotional regulation that our collections can bring us. Perhaps your collection is scattered around the house. Maybe that's how you like it. But if you're not so sure, perhaps try moving it all into one area and create a safe space there so that you can go there and immerse yourself in your collection when you're feeling stressed or overwhelmed, and regulate your emotions in that way. Perhaps you can use your collection to build in a relaxation routine. Maybe after work what you do is you go and spend some time with your collection. Perhaps rearrange things, put them in different orders, group them by color, group them by size, something like that. Something that takes you away from the overwhelm of the day. Perhaps you can carry something from your collection with you, or perhaps keep a photo or image on your phone so that when you are in a stressed moment you can access a part of your collection or a feeling from your collection, even if there's an article or a video that you could watch. Perhaps you don't have enough social engagement in your life and you can use your collection to make connections. Perhaps you can join a club. Maybe even just join an online community where you can discuss your collection with others and enjoy it in that way. Maybe you can use your items in the collection to start understanding yourself and your feelings. Perhaps look at, why did you get that item? What sort of feelings does it evoke in you? What were you feeling at the time that you got the item? Understanding or describing or accessing our emotions. And because of our strong connection to our collected objects, we can sometimes use those to evoke emotions and understand our emotions. If you are using your collections to anchor memories, perhaps you can use this type of mechanism to improve memory in your daily life. Can you use objects or images to learn things if you are studying? Can you use objects or images to remember a task or a process or a list of items? If you need to improve your categorization or organization skills, why not try to spend some time categorizing or organizing your collection? You can use a notepad, you can use a spreadsheet, you can use an app. Then see if you can transfer these skills into your daily life. If you're struggling with things like prioritizing and decision making, perhaps you can set some sort of goal whatever is feasible for you and acquire one item related to your collection a month, then you really have to work at deciding which item is the best for you. If you have a collection, it can become an area of growth or even a career for you. Maybe you are just collecting rocks, but could this move into an interest or a career in geology? Perhaps you're collecting vintage records. Could you maybe open a vintage record store or start selling items online? Think of these options. What collections do you have? Do you think you might understand why you collect those sort of items? Do you think perhaps you can use some of the skills that you have from collecting in other areas of your life to improve it? Let me know in the comments. As always, please like, subscribe, hit notifications. Until next time.